Halima was a young girl who lived in a small village with her family. Her parents struggled every day to feed her and her younger brothers. Sometimes there was no breakfast and sometimes they had to sleep without supper. Halima often sat outside the house and looked at the road, wishing that one day her life would be different. She wanted to dress well, eat good food and live without worry. But the poverty around her always reminded her that dreams were not easy to reach. One afternoon, while she was returning from the market where she had gone to help her mother sell beans, a black car stopped near her. The car was big and shiny, the kind she had only seen in movies or passing on highways. The door opened and a young man stepped out. He was tall, with dark glasses on his face and golden chains hanging around his neck. His shoes shone in the sunlight, and his smile carried the kind of confidence that drew eyes to him. Halima's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen anyone like him before. He introduced himself as Say. His voice was calm, but there was something commanding in it. He asked if she was tired from the market, and before she could reply, he offered to buy her food. Halima hesitated at first, but her empty stomach pushed her to agree. They went to a small restaurant near the bus stop. Say ordered rice, chicken, and drinks. Halima had never eaten such a large portion in her life. As she ate slowly, Say watched her and smiled. "You are too beautiful to be suffering," he said. "A girl like you deserves to live in comfort, not in hunger." His words sank into her heart like honey. Nobody had spoken to her like that before. When she returned home that evening, she told her friends about him. They clapped for her and said she was lucky. "Do you know who you just met?" one of them whispered. "Say is rich. He has cars, houses, and everything you can imagine." Their excitement made Halima's heart swell with pride. For the first time in her life, she felt noticed, special, and important. Her parents, however, were not as happy. Her mother frowned when Halima told her about the young man. "Be careful, my daughter," she warned. "Not all that glitters is gold. Many men with quick money bring only pain." Her father added softly, "Riches can blind the eyes, but character is what lasts." Halima nodded, but inside her heart she thought her parents did not understand. They had lived in poverty all their lives, but she wanted something more. The next day Say came again. This time he bought her new slippers and a bag of rice for her family. Halima's mother refused to touch the rice, but her younger brothers were too hungry to complain. Say began to appear often, each time with gifts, perfume, clothes, even money. To Halima, it was like a dream she never wanted to wake from. She walked through the village with her head held high, her friends whispering about her good fortune. One evening, Say invited her to sit in his car. The soft seats, the cool air from the air conditioner, and the sweet smell of leather filled her senses. She could hardly believe she was the same girl who used to walk barefoot on the hot ground. Say leaned closer and said, "Halima, you don't belong in poverty. Follow me, and I will show you a life beyond your imagination." His words echoed in her heart all night. At home, her parents tried again to stop her. "Do not follow him," her father begged. "I have heard stories about these young men who spend money without working. Be wise, my daughter." But Halima refused to listen. In her mind, poverty was a chain and Say was the key to her freedom. Days passed and her bond with Say grew stronger. He treated her with attention, something she had longed for all her life. Even though she noticed he never spoke about his job or family, she chose not to ask questions. She only wanted to enjoy the sweet taste of a new life. One Saturday, Say asked her to pack her things. "You will not stay here anymore," he said firmly. "Come with me and leave this suffering behind." Halima's heart beat fast. She looked at her parents' small house, the broken roof, the cracked walls, and the faded mats inside. Her mother stood at the door, tears in her eyes. "Halima, do not go," she pleaded. "Stay with us. This man will only bring you sorrow." But Halima could not hear her. Her friends gathered around, cheering as she entered Say's car. "You are lucky," they told her. "Your life will change forever." The car drove away, leaving behind the dusty village, the crying mother, and the worried father. As the road stretched ahead, Halima closed her eyes and smiled. She imagined herself in a big house, wearing golden clothes, eating whatever she liked, and never worrying about hunger again. To her, the journey had just begun. She had chosen wealth, chosen comfort, chosen Say. She believed her life was finally changing for the better. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered a warning, one she quickly pushed aside. For Halima, the beginning of this sweet story was too bright to see the shadows hiding behind it. Halima's life turned into something she had never dreamed was possible. From the moment she stepped into Say's big house, everything seemed like a dream. The house was painted white, with tall glass windows that reflected the sunlight in a way that made it look like a palace. Inside there were soft chairs, wide carpets and lights that sparkled like stars. For Halima, who had grown up in a small house with leaking roofs, it was like stepping into another world. Every morning, she woke up to the smell of sweet perfumes and the sound of music playing from the speakers in the house. Clothes in bright colors filled her wardrobe. Shoes of all styles lined the shelves, more than she could ever count. Sei gave her a gold necklace, telling her she was now his queen. When she walked through the streets with him, people turned to look, whispering about how beautiful she looked and how lucky she was. Her old friends often came to visit her, and they sat in her room, touching her new dresses and laughing with envy. "Halima, you are truly blessed," they said. "You are eating the life many of us only dream of." Their words filled her heart with pride. She told herself she had made the right choice when she entered Sei's car and left her old life behind. Every weekend there were parties. Big cars filled the compound, and men with golden watches and heavy rings laughed loudly as they drank. Women in expensive gowns danced, and the sound of music and laughter filled the night. Halima, dressed in shining clothes, sat by Sei's side. People admired her and treated her like royalty. Some even tried to befriend her, hoping she could open the doors to Sei's world for them. But in the middle of all the fun, Halima began to notice things that troubled her heart. Sometimes Sei would disappear into his room late at night, speaking on the phone for hours. His voice would rise, sometimes with anger, sometimes with laughter, but he never explained who he was talking to. Other times she saw him and his friends counting large bundles of money and hiding them in bags. Yet she never saw Sei go to work, nor did he ever mention what business he did. Halima's heart grew uneasy. Once she asked him gently, "Sei, what work do you do? How do you make so much money?" He laughed loudly and kissed her on the forehead. "Don't trouble yourself with such things," he said. "Just enjoy your life, my queen. That is all you need to do." His words silenced her, but the question never left her mind. One afternoon, when Sei left the house, Halima sat quietly in the living room, thinking. She remembered her mother's words, "Not all that glitters is gold." She looked around at the shining chairs, the sparkling lights, and the golden necklace on her neck. Everything was beautiful, yet her heart felt restless. She wondered if all this wealth was clean or if it carried a hidden darkness. Still, each time her doubts rose, she pushed them aside. When she wore her new clothes and saw her reflection in the mirror, her heart told her to forget her worries. When her friends praised her and said she was living like a queen, her pride reminded her that she was no longer the poor village girl. When she ate food she had never tasted before, her body told her to enjoy the moment. Halima was torn between her conscience and her comfort. Deep inside, she knew something was not right, but she was afraid of losing this new life. She told herself that maybe with time Sei would tell her the truth. Maybe his business was real and she was only being too curious. She wanted to believe him because believing him meant she could continue living in the world she had always wanted. At night, she sometimes dreamed of her old home. She saw her mother's tired face and her father's worried eyes. She saw her younger brothers playing with empty stomachs. Each dream left her with guilt, but when she woke up to silk sheets and shining lights, she brushed the guilt away. "I cannot go back," she told herself. "I have come too far." Her friends kept reminding her how lucky she was. One even said, "If I were you, I would never ask questions. Just enjoy the life. Not everyone is chosen like you." Halima smiled at those words, but in her heart she wished for peace, not only comfort. She longed for the kind of love that was honest, without secrets hiding in the dark. One evening, as she sat beside Sei during a party, she watched him closely. His laughter was loud, his chains glittered under the lights, but his eyes looked tired. For a brief moment she saw a shadow behind his smile. She wondered what kind of battles he fought when no one was looking. She wanted to ask, but the music was too loud and her courage too small. So she chose silence. She chose the parties, the gold, the cars, and the sweet words. She chose to close her eyes to the unease in her heart. But deep down, Halima knew that every choice has a price. She just did not know yet when the price of this glittering life would be demanded. Weeks slowly turned into months, and the shine of Halima's new life began to lose its sweetness. At first, everything felt like a dream come true, but little by little, shadows started to creep into her joy. She had gold around her neck, fine clothes on her back, and a big house to sleep in, yet her heart grew heavier each day. Whenever Sei and his friends gathered, their voices carried words that made her uneasy. They laughed loudly about clients and quick money. They joked about people far away, people who sent them money without even seeing them. Halima did not understand everything, but she understood enough to know that something was not right. She wondered if the tears she saw on television, the mothers crying, the fathers shouting about money stolen, were connected to the laughter echoing in Say's living room. At night, when the television flickered, Halima would sit quietly, hugging her knees. News reporters spoke of fraudsters and how they ruined families. She saw women weeping because their children could no longer go to school. She saw men begging the police to find the people who tricked them. Each tear on the screen felt like a weight pressing on her chest. She would touch the necklace around her neck and ask herself, is this comfort built on someone else's pain? But whenever she thought of speaking out or walking away, Say's voice would pull her back. He had a way of softening her fears with gifts and sweet words. One day when she looked troubled, he placed a new phone in her hands and said, Halima, you worry too much. I told you just enjoy life. I will take care of everything. She wanted to argue, but her eyes lingered on the shiny phone, and her doubts melted for a moment. The same cycle repeated again and again. Her heart whispered warnings, but her hands clung to the comfort she had never known before. She remembered her old life, worn slippers, empty pots, and tired nights, and fear of going back chained her silence. Sometimes she tried to convince herself that maybe she was wrong. Maybe Say had a hidden business she did not understand. Maybe the words clients and quick money meant something harmless. She repeated these thoughts in her mind, but they never truly silenced the unease inside her. There were nights when she lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Say laughed in the next room with his friends. She listened to their voices and wished she could shut her ears. A quiet voice inside her begged her to leave, but each time she imagined herself walking away, she also saw herself back in her mother's small house, struggling again. The thought of poverty scared her more than the fear of truth. One morning, Halima went to the market alone. As she walked past stalls filled with vegetables and grains, she heard two women whispering. That girl, one said, pointing at her. She follows that Say. Don't you know? He's a YAHOO boy. One day trouble will find her too. The words burned in Halima's ears. She walked away quickly, her face hot with shame. But their voices stayed with her all day, echoing in her heart like a drumbeat. Later that evening she looked at herself in the mirror. The fine dress she wore sparkled under the light, but her eyes looked tired. She remembered her parents' warnings. Her mother's voice returned to her mind, quick money does not last. She bit her lip, torn between fear and desire. That night, when Say noticed her silence, he brought her close and whispered, You are my queen. I will never let anyone hurt you. Stay with me and you will never know hunger again. His words wrapped around her heart like chains. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that love and riches could live side by side without lies. So she smiled and nodded, pushing her doubts deeper into her chest. But the doubts did not die. They grew. Each time she saw Say counting bundles of money, her stomach twisted. Each time she heard the news of fraud on television, her throat went dry. Each time she saw the mocking eyes of neighbors, shame cut into her pride. Halima was living two lives, one filled with shining lights, laughter, and gifts, and another filled with silent fears, restless nights, and unanswered questions. Her heart stood at a crossroad, but she lacked the courage to choose. And so, she remained in Say's world of glitter, knowing deep inside that one day, the truth she was running from would find her. One dark night, the house that once echoed with music and laughter turned into a place of chaos and fear. Halima had just settled into bed when she heard the sharp sound of sirens. Blue and red lights flashed outside the windows, and before she could understand what was happening, the mansion's heavy gates crashed open. Police vehicles rushed in, their tires screeching against the tiled driveway. Halima's heart pounded as loud voices filled the air. The police shouted commands and men in uniform stormed into the house. She sat frozen, her hands trembling as the world she had built around Say shattered before her eyes. In minutes, officers filled the living room. They searched the house with speed and precision, pulling out laptops, phones, and documents. Bags of money that Halima had once admired were carried away like stolen treasure. Expensive cars that Say flaunted in front of his friends were marked with yellow tape, ready to be towed. Say himself stood in the middle of the chaos, trying to smile, but fear betrayed his eyes. One officer read out the charges: fraud, internet scams, money laundering. The words sliced through Halima's heart like knives. She felt her knees grow weak, but she clutched the edge of a chair to stop herself from falling. The moment she would never forget came when the police handcuffed Say. His wrists, once decorated with gold watches, were now tied in cold steel. He looked at her briefly, his face pale, and whispered, "Halima, don't leave me." But before she could answer, the officers pushed him toward the door. Halima stood frozen, tears stinging her eyes. Her world collapsed in an instant. The glittering life she had chosen disappeared like smoke. Neighbors who once envied her gathered outside, pointing fingers and whispering loudly. "Didn't we say it? Didn't we warn her? Look at her now." Their words burned deeper than fire. She was not arrested, but her pride was crushed. For the first time she felt the full weight of her choices. She remembered her mother's warnings, her father's quiet advice, and the market women's whispers. All the voices she had ignored now returned to mock her heart. The house that had once felt like a palace now felt like a prison. Every gold chain, every fine dress, every sparkling shoe reminded her of lies, of broken families, of children whose school fees vanished into the very money she had once admired. She could no longer breathe in the place she once called paradise. It was her family who came for her the next morning. Her father's eyes were filled with disappointment, while her mother's face carried tears that words could not express. They did not shout, they did not beat her, they only spoke the truth. "The glitter you chased nearly destroyed you, Halima," her mother whispered, holding her close. "But you are alive. You can still rise again." Halima cried in her mother's arms, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. She remembered the nights she ignored her parents' warnings, the pride that made her deaf to wisdom, and the greed that blinded her eyes. Now, with nothing left but shame, she realized she had traded peace for pain. The days that followed were hard. When she walked through the streets, people stared at her. Some laughed, others shook their heads. She carried the weight of disgrace, but deep in her heart, she knew it was better to face shame with truth than to live in glittering lies. At night, Halima would lie awake in her parents' small house, staring at the ceiling. She thought of Sei sitting in a cold cell, his friends gone, his wealth seized. She wondered if he also thought of her, if he regretted pulling her into his world. But no matter what he felt, her decision was clear. She would never go back to that life. The fall was painful, but it opened her eyes. For the first time in months, Halima breathed freely. She was poor again, but she was no longer chained to lies. The glitter had ended, but in its place, a seed of wisdom began to grow inside her. Months later, Halima's life looked nothing like the glittering days she had once lived in Sei's mansion. She had returned to her small family home, where the walls were plain, the roof leaked when it rained, and the food on the table was just enough to share. But inside her heart, there was a peace she had never felt before. The weight of lies and shame had lifted. For the first time in a long while, she woke up each morning knowing she was free. Her parents welcomed her warmly, never reminding her of her mistakes, but guiding her with gentle words. They told her that life could always begin again, no matter how broken it seemed. With their encouragement, Halima decided to rebuild herself. She chose not to sit in regret but to rise, even if it meant starting small. With the little savings her parents could gather, she began selling clothes in the market. At first it was hard. She sat under the hot sun, calling out to passers-by, showing them the few pieces she had. Some people ignored her, others mocked her because of her past, but she held her head high. Each day she reminded herself that this was honest work, and honest work would always last longer than dirty wealth. Day by day her small stall began to grow. Customers returned because she was truthful with her prices. She did not cheat anyone. When a shirt had a small tear, she pointed it out instead of hiding it. Slowly, people began to respect her, not because of riches, but because of her honesty and dignity. Halima became stronger with each sunrise. The pain of her past did not disappear, but it turned into wisdom. She realized that sometimes life's hardest lessons become the seeds of our greatest strength. When she looked back at the girl who once chased gold chains and big cars, she no longer felt shame. She felt thankful that she had been saved before it was too late. Soon, young girls in the neighborhood began to notice her. They came to her stall, not only to buy clothes but also to ask questions. "Sister Halima, how did you stand again after all that happened? What made you leave the riches and return here?" She listened to them with patience, her eyes gentle, and then she shared her story. She told them about Sei, the mansion, the gifts, and the nights filled with laughter that turned to nights of fear. She told them about the shame of police sirens and neighbors pointing fingers. And then she told them about the peace she found in starting small, in selling clothes honestly, and in sleeping each night with a clean heart. Her words became a warning and a light. "Do not be fooled by easy riches," she would say. "They shine bright but they burn your soul. True happiness comes from hard work, even if it is small at first. When you build your life with honesty, no storm can destroy it." The girls listened, their eyes wide, and many of them promised themselves never to fall into the same trap. To them, Halima became more than a clothes seller. She became a symbol of courage. She was proof that even after falling into deep mistakes, a person could rise again stronger and wiser. In the evenings, when the market closed and Halima walked home with her parents, she often looked up at the sky. The stars above reminded her of her journey. Some stars shone brightly but quickly faded, just like the life she once chased. But others burned steadily, softly, and lasted through the night. That was the kind of life she now wanted, a steady, honest light that would never burn out. Her parents watched her with pride. They knew the shame she once carried had turned into honor. Neighbors who had mocked her now greeted her with respect, seeing the change in her life. She was no longer the girl blinded by gifts. She was now a woman with wisdom, strength, and dignity. Though her path was not easy, Halima no longer feared the struggle. She understood that every coin she earned honestly carried more value than all the stolen millions she once admired. Every smile from a satisfied customer, every word of respect from her community, was worth more than golden chains or luxury cars. Halima's story spread through the community, carried from mouth to mouth. People spoke not only of her fall but also of her rise. And in her heart, she knew this was the true gift of her journey, that her pain had become a lesson for others, and her mistakes had turned into a message of hope. She had learned that life was not about chasing glitter but about building light. And in that truth she found happiness that no money could ever buy. Halima, once the girl who followed a rich Yahoo boy, had now become a woman who led others toward wisdom. And every time she looked into the eyes of the young girls who came to her for advice, she smiled and said the words that became her life's truth. Quick money fades but self-respect lasts forever.